Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit of the WoW podcast, Blue Please on cynicalbrit.com. Welcome to the Halls of Origination video. This is the hall, or the Halls of Origination. There are multiple halls within this large pyramid. It's kind of weird, honestly, because not only is this a very TARDIS-like instance, but you go to areas that aren't actually on the outside of this pyramid. Yes, time-bending technology, whatever the case, I'm sure we can get over it. It's a cool pyramid, I'll give them that. It's pretty kick-ass overall. On the scale of 1 to pyramid, it's definitely pyramid. I thought I'd give you this nice overview of it before we went in, because I love this Egyptian-style architecture. It is badass. Hence, I'm going to fly around and take every possible opportunity to look at it. We've seen some of this before in the unfinished Oldham video. You'll notice that they've gotten rid of the giant, bizarre mushroom placeholder things, and a lot of the crap that was strewn around here has been gotten rid of. Nice and clean, as intended. Yes, is this a suitably epic introduction for you? No? We need explosions and rock music. Oh, whatever. The Halls of Origination has the most bosses of any 5-man dungeon in Cataclysm thus far. A grand total of 7 are available here. It is a multi-level dungeon. That means you will have to transition between various different floors in order to get to all of the bosses. There is more than one map for this area. It is that large. Despite the fact that there are 7 bosses, this is not an incredibly long instance. Our run took us approximately, including downtime, about 55 minutes. It could be very easily done in 45. The storyline behind this area is it's an ancient Titan construct, and within the halls lies an ancient treasure. If placed in the wrong hands, apparently it could endanger all life on Azeroth. So, supposedly, with the help of Bran Bronzebeard, you go and unlock the mysteries within the treacherous Titan halls and protect the Titan's ancient treasure. And there is no evidence of that actually happening. One has to assume that that is linked in through a series of quests that I do not have access to as of yet. I'm level 83, and this is supposed to be a level 85 dungeon. Everyone else is 85. Now, I have sped it up, as always, 200%, and I must apologize initially for the frame rate drops that you see in this section right here. This would appear to be either an optimization issue, or it's got something to do with the streaming content. I've explained how streaming content works in the past, but I'll give you a quick refresh. It is possible to play the game before you have downloaded all of it, and they've been making us test that ever since they put it in, and content will stream over the internet and will download to your machine on the fly. What that seems to have caused in a number of areas, as far as I'm aware, I have everything downloaded, but I would have to assume that Blizzard has made it so that you can't have everything downloaded just so that they can test the streaming thing. It's causing big frame drops and a lot of performance issues, at least early on in the zone. The keen-eyed amongst you may have noticed that my Fraps frame rate dropped to around 15 on the first pull, and yet it is now absolutely solid, and continues to be solid at the filming frame rate of 30 FPS for the entire area. Now, the nice thing about having a 7-boss instance is that it generally doesn't have too much trash between each boss, and of course there is a lot of loot available. As to how much, well, as far as I can tell, you can get 8 pieces from this particular dungeon. You get 2 off the last boss, which seems to be whichever you kill last, because you do have a choice in the matter. What is that, you might ask, before watching the entire video, and I will answer. That is the Blizzard Power Aura for the one and only Impact. Why am I using Impact? Well, I'll explain that to you later. Now, first boss coming up right here, and I have turned on the health and mana indicators because people asked me to, and honestly, I never used it with my old UI. I've got a whole bunch of mods that I don't use in the beta. I probably should, but hey, whatever. So that's been turned on, now that I've finally found out how to do it. Now, what does this guy do? Well, his main mechanic is a shield, and that shield will come on, and what you have to do is you have to jump down to those 2 pillars to the left and right. You need 2 people to do this, to switch off his shield. If you don't switch off his shield, well, you can't really do much to him at all. He's also got this nasty area of effect stacking damage thing that doesn't seem to do as much as it should. I think it might not be working correctly. And aside from that, he's got a couple of Void Zone style things, basically get out of the fire, which are generated by those odd little statue things on the wall. They fire lasers from their eyes. Yes, indeed. Right, now we were waiting around a little bit here, so let me just skip to the start of the fight. Now you can really use just about anybody to leap down and switch the levers off in this normal mode. We use 2 mages just because, hey, we've got some nice AoE. We are both expected to fire. There's that laser fire thingy I was talking about. Again, you don't really have to worry too much about that. And there's the shield. Now I have to leap down here and switch that off. I will be attacked by these pit vipers. They are very, very easily killed, so not too much to really worry about there. You'll also notice that debuff in the corner there doing way less damage than it should. As to what causes that, well, he does this channeled hymn, which I believe can be interrupted. Let's go and do that again. There we go. Kill a few snakes just for the sake of it. Fantastic stuff. And yes, they do follow you up the stairs, which is a little bit irritating, but they're easy enough to deal with. They don't have an awful lot of health, as you can see. Okay, let's get this one finished off, shall we? Nothing else to this fight, really. Just avoid the fire, turn off the shield, and don't get eaten by snakes. And there's the loot. I'm not entirely convinced that this area has been fully itemized in the beta as of yet. We got very few green drops, and we got no blue drops at all, whereas Grimbatol was showering us in the damn things. I also didn't notice any cloth drops or anything like that, so it seems to be partially done. And what you saw there was the map of the lower level, which is where we are right now. We're going to have to beat another boss here, and then there is a placeholder teleporter in the middle of this room that will take you to the next level. Also one of the most impressive areas that you'll see here. I mean, the architecture in general is awesome. It's a nice mix of Egyptian and Titan, as I've said before, and it bears repeating. Now, while I'm here, I might as well tell you why exactly I'm using Impact. Impact's been changed in the beta, and hopefully this will make it live to Cataclysm. Not only does it do that 2-second stun on your next fire blast, but it spreads any fire damage over time effects you have on a target to any other target within 12 yards. So for AoE packs, it's unbelievable. For any pack, it's unbelievable. It's a fantastic ability now, and well worth having in a PvE environment. Now, these don't really do an awful lot. They have a poison. It's pretty easy to get rid of. Just cleanse it. Big deal. They don't do a lot of damage. There aren't all that many challenging trash packs in here. They're nothing like Grimbatol. They're much smaller, they're much easier to control, and they generally just lack deadly abilities. Yet this is still a level 85 dungeon. Now, I've heard some rather disturbing rumours that they have nerfed Grimbatol quite hard. After I did that video, it seems that they decided it would be a good idea to have the damage sustain from when you do the bombing run, as opposed to have you kill an entire pack outright, otherwise they would go back to full health. Now, personally, I disagree strongly with that change, and I would hope they at least put it back to the way it should be in heroic mode, because quite frankly, that's pretty disgraceful. Hey, do free damage. Well, okay, but can we have something where you have to focus and not suck? That would be great. Okay, up we go. Now, the next boss is at the top of this, and we're going to need to get him out of the way in order to progress. And this is what I was saying was a little bit odd, because it didn't look like this on the outside, and yet it does now. Now, that is the temple, the pyramid, active, as you can see. As to what it's doing, I really don't know, and quite frankly, I don't want to know. Seems a little dangerous to me. New trash right here, these dust-born horrors. I cannot even figure out what they do. Not an awful lot, really. They do a little bit of magic damage, nothing special and nothing to worry about. What you'll also notice is this. There are camels. Skating camels. The animations are not fully done yet, and neither are the riding models, as you can see. Whatever the case, it's weird because these exist here and they don't seem to exist for any particular reason. But they give you a rather unique benefit, and that benefit is the ability to cast anything while moving. So if I decided I wanted to, say, cast a fireball, as you can see, I can actually do that while moving around. Now, you don't need to do that here, and we just pulled this guy straight away because he really doesn't do an awful lot. He fires out random flame bolts, and yes, that is a fiery version of Lord Marigar. It was too cool a model not to reuse a bunch of times. Depressing, really, isn't it? But not exactly what I'd call a surprise. You never know, it could be a placeholder model, especially considering it makes absolutely no sense to have this undead model here in the middle of Oldham, but whatever. Second phase. There are ads. You will kill them. They pose practically no threat to anybody and shouldn't be any issue for you whatsoever. Once they are dead, he'll pop up again, and then you smack him about a bit and he dies. Big deal. End of story. Not exactly the most inspired boss I've ever seen. The funny thing is, I can't really see how they'd expand this for the heroic mode other than making him hit harder. They'd have to add a bunch of abilities to actually make that entertaining in any way, shape, or form. And for some reason, he also doesn't drop any loot at the moment. I have no idea why that is, but hey, at least we got some cash out of him. You may also notice that this is awesome. But aside from that, you may notice that there was a little thing down there that said some money's gone to the guild bank. That is one of the guild perks. It generates an additional 5% gold or so, and that gold goes directly to the guild bank, and that comes from drops from bosses as well as drops from mobs. It's very nice. Okay, here's the teleporter. Now, this instance is described as non-linear, which means, in theory, you could do these in any order you desired. Personally, we think the best way to do it is that order, but hey, whatever. It doesn't really matter all that much. Now, we have more bosses on this floor. Technically, this area has 3 floors. You've got this one right here, which has 2 bosses. You've got the, sort of near the top of the pyramid, which has 1. And then you've got an upper floor, which has 4 guardians. And these are all separate bosses with small amounts of trash before each of them, again, which can be killed in any order you choose. I have to assume that they have a shared loot pool, but there is no proof of that right now. There's also something that's very much worth stealing from these guys if you're a mage. You get this fire shield, which increases your haste, and it also shoots out random fireballs to anyone that's near you. Very nice indeed, and it reminds me of that fire shield that you could steal in the Mechanar. Oh yes, that was entertaining, and yes, it did pull aggro. Sup, Bran, my homeboy?
Right, let's go. Just need to input the final entry sequence into the door mechanism, and... that did the trick. The control room should be right behind this. Oh, wow. What? This isn't the control room. There's another entire defense mechanism in place, and the blasted rock trogs broke into here somehow. Trogs. Why did it have to be trogs? Okay. Let me think a moment. Mirrors pointing all over the place. 4 platforms with huge elementals. I got it! I saw a tablet that mentioned this chamber. This is the Vault of Lights. Okay, simple enough. I need you adventurers to take out each of the 4 elementals to trigger the opening sequence for the far door.
Thanks, Bran. I don't know how the rock trogs got in here either. That doesn't really make any sense, considering all the stuff we had to fight through. Oh well. It's probably through that little puzzle thing. Looks like there's a hole in the floor. Now, this whole section is a pseudo-gauntlet-style event. You have to kill these 4 elemental mini-bosses. No, they don't drop anything. They each have a selection of abilities. None of them are particularly challenging in any way. But you'll always be fighting trogs every time you're not fighting a mini-boss. Every time you move across, they constantly respawn. They're of no threat to you whatsoever, and you need simply tank and spank them. Throw some AoE down there. If you have a mage, you'll have a grand old time, and no doubt will be permanently buffed with the 10% haste that you get from Pyromaniac. This guy sends out some cyclones, and he also has an earth shock, and that's it. No problem at all. Take him down, easy enough. It's one of the new Unbound elemental models. I believe you've seen one of those before. We had one in the Vortex Pinnacle, and they are all over the place. I do like this little sliding puzzle thing on the floor. It's just a shame we didn't get to do anything with it. I recall a puzzle in one of the early dungeons of Dungeons and Dragons Online, which involved doing, was effectively an arcane version of Pipe Dream. It was pretty badass, honestly, and it's a shame that we haven't seen anything like that in WoW. I suppose the chess event is probably the closest you're going to get to that. Looking for a little bit of puzzle creativity, Blizzard. Get the mind working. No doubt they'll whine for nerfs. Now, this guy doesn't really do much. He's got a ground spike, and that's about it. Nothing to really worry about. Bring him down nice and quick, and that's 2 of 4. You need to kill all of these elementals in order to open the gateway there. Once you do that, you will get a boss, and you will gain access to the top floor, which has, might even be the bottom floor. Nobody really knows. That's the problem. Because they've got placeholder teleporters there right now, as opposed to lifts or any other devices, we don't really know what level's where. Whatever the case, it will give you access to the 4 lords of this particular area to get lots and lots of nice loot and fairly interesting encounters. Some of them are quite neat. Some of them, I think, need a little bit of work. Some people ask me, why do you always play a mage? Well, you see all those numbers popping up all over the screen. That's why I play a mage. That's why anybody plays a mage. And it's good to be able to get back to fire. For a time, there was an optimal fire build. It was a Torment the Weak Deep Fire combo build that was extremely good for PvE, but honestly, Arcane has been ahead for quite some time. Nice to be able to burn things again. Now, this guy. Don't stand in the water, I guess. Slightly expanding pools of water. If you stand in them, bad things happen. And he also sends out water bubbles, which do about 7,000 damage a second. And you can blink out of those. They do count as a stun. Otherwise, you have to DPS the bubbles down to pop them. Otherwise, your guys will die. Or you can just heal through them. Since they're a stun, though, it's not exactly ideal. So I think you're going to want to kill those. I would hope the heroic version will actually kill you if you stay in them for too long, as opposed to be very easily healed by a heal over time spell. But hey, there you go. And last but by no means least, it's the fire guy. What does he do, you might ask? Well, what do you think? Many fire, left side and even side. Gouts of flame will appear from the floor, and he also has a pulsing hellfire style ability. It'll do damage to anyone near there, but as you can see, our tank has no problem with this at all. He is geared in normal mode 85 gear. He's having no issues with it whatsoever. Well, Bran should be pleased.
That's it! You've done it! The vault door is opening! Now we can... Oh, no!
Bran is just a walking disaster area. He brings death and destruction wherever he will tread, and in this case, he's brought in a titanic construct of some description. He's a guard. Are you shocked by this? You shouldn't be. There is a guard. This is not what I'd call a massively entertaining fight, really. He does kill all the trogs, which is kind of handy, so they won't spawn anymore. He's got a few abilities. The first is he has a timing-based, as far as I can tell it's a timing-based anyway, debuff that applies to the entire group, which lowers your overall health. Kind of sucks, but the chances of it getting anywhere near threatening before he dies is very, very low indeed. He can also do a channeled Void Zone / Mind Flay style ability, which can be avoided if you're very, very quick, but otherwise it'll lock you down and do some damage. It's not really worth worrying about, as you will see. Have a look at how much damage it's doing there. Bugger all. Simple answer to that. And he also has his Omega mode, which will cause a large number of those Void Zone / Mind Flay things to be all over the place and do damage to the entire group. There doesn't appear to be a way out of this, so decided to move very close to him. Doesn't do a blind bit of difference, but it does about 5,000 damage every 4 seconds, so who cares? That's not going to kill anybody. That's not even going to threaten anybody. That seems to be the crux of a lot of the fights in here, honestly. They're not a threat to anybody at all. Our guys are in level appropriate and hopefully dungeon appropriate gear as well. I suppose the argument could be made that since we're wearing a lot of normal 85-ish, 83 to 85 dungeon gear anyway already, would be on heroics by now. Certainly a valid argument, but is it just me that believes that a level-capped 85 dungeon should actually threaten you in some way? And we don't play all that well here, but we don't die. None of us die the entire video, in any way, shape, or form. Compared to Grim Batol, this is a cakewalk. Right. Now, here is the area with 4 bosses in it. This is nice if you like nice, quick loot. There are a couple of different packs before each one, and they all have various different themes, as you can see. You can do this in any order you wish, as far as I can tell, and the last one you kill will drop 2 pieces of loot, which is why I assume it's pooled loot. It might not be, in which case you could perhaps choose the boss that you are really wanting some items on to get a better chance of getting the item you want. I really don't think they're going to put that in, because if they do, it's going to cause pugs to complain and whine and argue and scream and cry over everything, and for some reason they still seem to hold pugs in some kind of regard. I don't know why that is. It's a suboptimal and dumb way of doing content, and no doubt that'll make people cry on my comments page. That's fine. More comments equals higher rating. Now, what do these guys do? not too much, really. We choose the DPS down the Flux Animator first. You can really just AoE these. The only thing you need to worry about are the Star Shards that don't seem to have an aggro table. They are quite like the Sparks, if you recall, on the Curator in the one and only Karazhan. Don't really do much, though. They're annoying. That's about it. Now, this boss is fairly interesting. The problem I've got with it is all these interesting mechanics don't seem to amount to anything. They can't really kill you in any way, as far as I can tell. You can keep an eye on the health bars and see exactly how that works. Right, one of the most striking abilities she's got is similar to one of the bosses in the Trial of the Crusader. She will do a supernova and you have to look away, otherwise it will do about 18k damage. Now, I have 58,000 health, and there's not really anything else in this boss fight that could be doing damage to me at the same time in order to make that worthwhile. So that 18k health damage might as well not happen, right? Because it can't kill you. It's irrelevant. What else can she do? Well, at certain levels of health, she will split up into 3. You simply target the one at the top, DPS it down. Once you've killed one of them, she will go back to her normal form. She also has the Arcane Rain, which does a little bit of damage to the raid, but not a huge amount, as you can see there by the health. And she's got a nasty shield. It's basically a souped-up mana shield that will do a 40% spell reflect and will also absorb damage on mana instead of health, but it is pretty easy to break. It just elongates the fight. So there we go, taking it down, and you just off-tank those. Hell, the same tank can take all 3 without any problems at all. Focus fire on 1. There's the supernova, turn away to avoid it. She'll split once again, and that's really about it. I'm looking at my health bar right here. It never goes down. There's nothing doing damage to me. There's barely anything doing damage to the tank. Does it sound like I'm complaining? Because I am bloody complaining. Seriously. I would just like to be able to not snore my way through an instance. The problem I've got with this is that I'm not convinced the heroic modes are going to be amazing and heroic. There's no proof of that right now, other than Blizzard have said, well, we kind of want to go back to the way heroics used to be. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I'm looking very much forward to doing all the heroics. And yes, when the heroics come into the beta, I will do every single one of them, and I will film every single one of them for you. And I will point out whether or not they're doing it right. I certainly hope so. I think what makes me hopeful about this dungeon in heroic mode is that a lot of these bosses, particularly these last few bosses, seem to have a lot of potential. It's like, these are kind of cool mechanics, and these mechanics could potentially be awesome if they were souped up and given a little bit more power, which you'd expect them to be in a heroic mode. And you also get new mechanics and new abilities in a heroic mode, I would hope, that help contribute to the whole. I've always said that boss design is about making an encounter more than the sum of its parts. That means that the abilities have to synergize. They have to work together. And no, synergize is not just some corporate buzzword that you might hear in the office from an irritating manager. In this context, it's simply the idea that abilities should work in tandem to produce something that is more challenging than, say, throwing one ability and then the other. Say there was an ability that did a damage over time, and then say there was an ability that did a direct damage. Now, say that damage over time also had a healing debuff attached to it. Now, if that healing debuff disappeared before the direct damage ability, it wouldn't be quite as good, would it? Because it would have been irrelevant. If there was no other form of damage coming in and that dot was not sufficient to kill you, then that ability might as well not exist. But if you combine the two, then it starts to become a little bit more challenging, it becomes more interesting, and you have to deal with more complex mechanics. A lot of well-designed raid encounters use this, and a lot of badly designed raid encounters don't. And it's generally the case that if you don't have synergy between abilities, then a boss is going to suck. That is the case in some of the videos I've shown you. It's not the case in others. They seem to be hitting the mark more than not, which is good, but there is still quite a bit of work to be done. Now, as to what this guy does, he's got a force choke, as I like to call it. We've seen that before. It was in Grim Batol. He sort of strangles you. It doesn't do a huge amount of damage. It's about 4 or 5 ticks worth, adding up to maybe 20k at max. I am a level 83 mage with 58,000 HP. Big deal. He'll also spawn seed pods on the ground. If you leave them alive too long, they can spawn into a variety of nasty critters. Most likely you will get those sort of lasher-style plants that will come and do damage. He will also spawn spores, and they're similar to the trash that you saw earlier. Don't stand in the brown stuff. Simple as that. That's all there is to that boss. If you do want to have a closer look at the loot, then please by all means use your brain, which involves pressing the pause button on the video. I've also been told you can even go backwards and forwards now. The wonders of modern video streaming technology. Okay, that's 2 out of 4, so let's head into the Chaos boss, Setesh. You should note the Egyptian theme in the name and the fact that he's an Anubis-style construct. Right. Now these guys, not really all that hard. They're actually binding a larger void elemental at the back, and once you engage, you will start to grow in power. Eventually, he will be released. They don't really do anything too impressive. They have a AoE Shadow Bolt volley ability, which does next to no damage at all, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. They also have a Void Zone, as you can see there. The Void Lord will pop out, and he's just a slightly bigger version of that. He, again, doesn't do all that much either. He'll do a Shadow Bolt volley, there may be a Void Zone, you kill it, it's of no concern to anybody. Right, now this guy, this is Setesh, the Chaos guy. Now, he's got a couple of things. The first thing, and possibly the most threatening thing he'll do, is he'll create a portal, and out of this portal will spawn constructs. These constructs cannot be taunted, and they also have a lot of life, and they also hit like a truck. The simple way to avoid that being a problem is to allow your tank to get a few hits on it, gain some aggro. Untauntable does not mean unaggroable, folks. Easy concept. Don't hit them, don't do area of effect damage, it's really not a problem. He will cast Chaos Bolt as his primary attack, walk over here, there's the portal, and he will also do some area of effect Void Zone style things on the ground that you will see eventually when he decides to actually do them. Oh, he'll also spawn Void Seekers as well. You can kill them if you so desire. There you go, those are the little void bubbles on the ground. Don't stand in them. He'll also spawn a Void Zone style thing on the ground. You can see it right there. It's very clear, very easy to see. I have seen a couple of other videos where people have been running on lower graphic settings. Don't do that. That's why you can't actually see anything. Turn your spell effects up. If you have low spell effects, it'll just show as a faint wisp of grey smoke. Doesn't work out so well. Now, some of you might be wondering what that debuff is. Well, that is the mage version of Bloodlust. It is Time Warp, it's exactly the same, and yes, it does share a cooldown with Bloodlust and Heroism, as you might imagine. Okay, last but by no means least... Yay! I have not seen those guys in ages. So many good memories. Shame they're about to ruin them. Well, not really. Trash is trash. I just remember the packs of 4 in AQ40. Now that was some trash. Oh, yes, indeed. And don't even get me started on Cthulhu trash. Bad memories. I still get shakes in the night about that. This pack will pull us 3. And the main things you have to worry about are the Firestorm that will come down from the sky, as well as a directional ground pound, which doesn't really do all that much. Elementals will just sort of stand there hitting you. It's nothing you really need to worry about. But they do have a buff that can be stolen, but I wouldn't recommend it, which apparently increases the amount of fire damage done. Oh yeah, and they also split. Twice, I believe. So you do have to worry about that, deal with it. You'll see the buff there. I do steal it. This is supposed to increase fire damage done. It's bugged right now. It actually decreases it, as you are about to see on the boss. Now, what does the boss do, you might ask? First things first, he will do a Holy Fire style ability to everyone in the area. You can't avoid it, but it doesn't do too much damage anyway, so it's nothing you need to really worry yourself about. As long as your healer is awake and has hands, you should be okay. He'll also, at around 50%, do a large area of effect channeled ability, which cannot be interrupted, but it also increases the damage you do by 100%, so an AoE heal will serve you well. You probably won't die from it. It's very, very unlikely. He'll also bring meteors down from the sky, summon Sun Orb. However, these can be interrupted. Yes, you did, in fact, just see a dazed boss. Don't ask me why, but it can happen. And last but by no means least, those fire cyclones that you no doubt remember from Ulduar, they exist as well. He can have more than one out at any given time. That's actually it. He doesn't do anything else, as much as I wish that he did. Okay, allow me to correct myself there. Actually, that seems to be timing-based as opposed to actual health-based, because he just did it there at about 25% as opposed to around 50, which is what my guildies told me might happen. Evidently, we just nuked the hell out of him. That's pretty much it. It's a really nicely designed instance, and I do like the length of it and the number of bosses that are available there, but like I said, the normal mode is not challenging in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't require an awful lot of attention, and I would hope the heroic mode is a lot better. I still think there's a lot they could do to the normal mode to make it challenging without making it ridiculously hard, but hey, there you go. My name's been Totalbiscuit, and that's been a look at the Halls of Origination, aka WoW. I'll see you next time.